What's up, breathing people? Welcome back. Today, I'm joined by my wife, Brittany, and we're going over how to communicate in marriage without fighting. Somehow we're going to get through this podcast without fighting. So we're going to talk about that. She has curated questions from the internet on this topic. So we're just going to go into that. She's going to ask, I'm going to answer, we'll discuss it, and then you will be informed. So how special is it that you will listen to us and gather information that is so applicable to your life, transformative, really? And I'm going to stop talking because I don't know what I'm saying. Take it away.
Okay. So, what things are causing couples to fight? And then the second part of the question is, and how can they identify the underlying issues causing the fights?
So, what issues are causing them to fight?
What things, so there's probably a lot of things that could cause somebody to fight.
Right.
But what are some major things that might cause people to fight? Or ways of going about things that might cause a fight?
Okay.
And how can they identify the underlying issues behind those fights?
Oh, okay. All right. So I think a lot of people, fights start from very mundane issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like fights don't come from kind of the big topic issues, because I feel like we actually address those more often than some of the mundane, everyday issues that exist in our marriages.
Right.
So I think one of the ways to identify that you might be getting towards a fight, if there's a small thing in your marriage that you are leaving untouched, that will develop into a fight eventually. Like if you're just ignoring that issue completely because you think this is such a small issue, that will be the thing that you will fight about in the future. I could be wrong about that, but I think a lot of the big issues that we encounter in our marriage, there's definitely going to be things that you fight about with those. Finances, you're going to fight about kids, you're going to fight about
in-laws.
Yeah. Those are the things, though, that I think get addressed most often. Still could cause fights, but they get addressed most often. And the more that you're addressing something, the less you're going to fight about it.
Yeah.
Because that means conversation's continual. Conversation is happening around these areas. The areas that seemingly are, not as important, I feel like are the danger zones that you have to watch out for, because those will creep in and you don't have any base conversations about those issues to reference, to know kind of where your spouse's heart is about those things, because you've never talked about them.
Yeah.
So now it's just, you're coming cold to this, it's blowing up, and then you have to figure out where everybody's coming from. What's their angle? What's their emotion towards this? I just feel like it's I don't know, something to watch out for. Yeah.
I have a question about that.
Okay.
So I have a little bit of pushback. I agree with you, but also for those little things that aren't like the bigger issues, like financial things and in-laws, how do you know you're not being nitpicky though? Like sometimes things will bother
by
you.
Addressing those things? Like nitpicky because you talk about them?
Just making sure you're not being nitpicky though. Like what if you're easily annoyed? And it's your issue.
Oh, I got you.
Like, what if, you're just easily annoyed by a lot of things? Like, when can you be like, how can you discern, okay, this really, this is my issue and I need to get over it? Or do I need to address it with my husband or my spouse?
Yeah. I think.
Because if
I think it's always dependent on your approach to that issue.
Okay.
So you could be annoyed by it and still approach it in a way that's not nitpicky. You can still approach that issue in a way that's constructive, that leads to positive conversation with your spouse about that thing.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of it's the approach that people take. Why women get, wow, they're all nags. It might just be that they don't have good enough tools to know how to approach a certain conversation with their husband about things, and it's received as nagging. It's received as nitpicky.
What do you think about this though? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No.
What if the person that is being annoyed has a deeper issue that they haven't realized yet? And the example I have in my head, because I think that will help it be more specific, is let's just say the wife doesn't realize it, but she's actually nervous or jealous of the way her husband relates to any other woman.
Okay.
Okay. And so she's annoyed that he stayed at work longer because she thinks that he's talking to the women there at his work. And she's annoyed when he spends extra time talking to the cash register at Wawa because it's a woman. Yeah. And so she keeps like bringing these things up, like, why did you, and maybe she doesn't even realize that that's her fear, but she's like, why did you take so long in Wawa? Or why did you stay out? Why did you stay later at work? Or like, why can't you just come home at the time? Now, maybe this is not the right way to approach the issue, but you hear what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, how can somebody catch the deeper issue there?
I think by answering the question, why do you care? I think all of us need to be able to answer, because that's the appropriate response from your spouse to any of the examples that you just gave.
Right.
Why do you care that I'm talking to my coworkers that happen to be female?
Right.
Why do you care that I talked to that cashier for that long? Why
so maybe before you even come with with the annoyance or the issue, make sure you know why.
Yes.
Like, make sure you can come and say, because once you take that second step to figure out why does this bother me so much,
right,
then you'll be able to get to that deeper issue that maybe you didn't want to admit to yourself before.
And I think a better way to approach any of all the things you're calling annoyances or issues aren't actually annoyances or issues. They're feelings that we have. So I think it's best to...
But when you first look at it, at first glance, somebody might think they're looking at the issue as that tangible thing.
Right.
That he stayed after work longer.
Right.
When really what you're saying is not actually that.
But that's why it might be good to investigate everything and start with it being a feeling. Before you might feel annoyed, you might feel a certain way about one of these things, one of these occurrences. But if you start with, how do I feel about this, instead of calling it an issue? Gotcha. I just worry about, and I think people do this, where you call something an issue with no investigation.
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that it's an issue?
Yeah.
Especially if you haven't brought it to the attention of the other person in the issue.
Right.
It could be a non-issue if you talk to them about it. So start with, why do I feel this way?
Mm-hmm.
On anything.
Right.
I think this is an issue. But why, or how do I feel about this thing? That's, excuse me.
Why is it bothering me?
Right. Why is it bothering me? I feel this way about it. Why is it bothering me? How do I feel about this thing?
Right.
So I think it's just a way of bringing it back from the precipice of, this is an issue.
Yes.
Or this is annoying, and saying, okay, I feel a certain way. Just start there.
Yes.
About everything. I feel a certain way. Why? And then you'll actually, if it still annoys you after you investigate that feeling, now you can go to your partner and you can go to your spouse and be like, this is why I keep getting annoyed when you spend so much time in front of the cashier at Wawa. At Wawa. I don't,
Yeah.
It's such a funny thing. But yeah.
But that I like that, because then you are getting to the deeper issue, whether it's with finances or something like that. You're like, oh, this bothers me because I have a fear that I'm not enough for you.
Okay.
Right. If we're talking about that issue, or maybe there's something with the finances that bothers somebody, and that's because they're afraid that, or maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're
getting into very specific issues now.
I'm getting specific so that people can understand that sometimes these little issues that seem little do have a deeper meaning.
Oh, okay.
Like something like, let's say, you like to just go out on, I don't know, take a day off and you spend like $200, and then your spouse is like, that bothers them. Well, why does that bother them?
Yeah.
There's a reason behind that. It's not just that you spent that much money. Maybe they are afraid that, or maybe they're jealous that they didn't get to spend that. They're like, if you get to spend that much, I get to spend that much.
Right.
Or whatever the issue is, or maybe they don't think that there's enough for the next vacation that they wanted to take, or whatever that is. But there's like something deeper that you need to get
to. But
it
usually comes out very similar without investigating that deeper issue. Like it most of the time will just come out, why did you do that? Do you not care about our family and our finances?
Yes.
That's not the issue.
That's not the deeper issue.
Right. So just to what you're saying, if you don't investigate, there are these common ways that we poke at, nag, fight with our spouse because we're not investigating those things. So just like we should communicate more about all of these issues so that they don't lead to bigger issues.
Yeah.
We need to communicate with ourselves more so that these feelings don't become issues.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Okay. So what steps can a couple take to better communication?
Wait, say it again.
I'm wondering if I mistyped something, but what steps can a couple take to better communication if most of their interactions result in fighting?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does make a lot of sense. So like constantly, I get it. Constantly people keep getting to fight.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
Where it just doesn't seem like there's any lead up. It's just, we're talking, now we're fighting.
Right. This thing came up and now we're fighting again.
Yeah. And that happens a lot. What you need to do is investigate again. Why?
Yeah.
Why do you think you result to fighting immediately?
Yes.
And you could blame your spouse, and that's the easy way out of doing that investigation with yourself, but you're a part of the fight.
Yes.
The fight doesn't exist. I say this with conflict. Conflict doesn't exist if you're out of it. Like if you're like, oh, my spouse, that means you're just, you're just watching them have issues. You're not in a conflict. A conflict is two parties. Same thing with a fight in a marriage. It takes two to tangle.
Right.
Tango. They both work.
Both, yeah.
But you're involved in it. So what you need to do is to step back from those situations, preferably in between one of your fights with your spouse, and investigate why it seems to always lead to that from you. Because if it escalates to there,
you helped it escalate.
Right. Maybe your spouse does escalate it quickly because that's a default setting from their family. Maybe they grew up and everything was a fight. So they just escalate everything to that degree. That could be the reason. But you're never going to know how you play a part in that positively or negatively if you don't investigate. And maybe you can come out of that investigation and be like, man, I really don't do much to attribute to that conversation rising to the level of a fight.
So what questions is somebody going to ask themselves to investigate how they're a part of the conflict?
I think there's a couple of questions that you can ask, especially if you're trying to discover your part in the fighting. And that should be your main investigation. But one thing that you can do is say, what is my part in this? And actually dwell on that. I know we're saying that's what you're trying to get to. Actually ask the question. A lot of times we will say, I'm going to go investigate how I'm involved in this. And then we'll ask all of these roundabout questions that don't actually address the main one, which is, how are you a part of this?
Right.
And that's the most important one to figure out. What is my part in this? From that, you can go to a litany of questions and be like, how has my family, my upbringing played a part in why I communicate with my spouse in this way?
Yeah.
I think that's really important because a lot of times we'll discover ways in which our family spoke to each other play right into our marriage relationships.
That's good. That's so true.
So investigate your family of origin and figure out, did they yell? Did they?
What was their go-to response?
Yeah.
I think another good question to ask is, why am I defensive right now? And do I have to be?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times that adds to the fight, because all of a sudden you're like putting up your defenses. So now you're not trying to investigate. You're just like defense and shoot back.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, I don't need to be defensive right now. Let's figure this out. Like being filled with curiosity instead of like bearing down for a fight, I think would be helpful. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. Because I think if you're getting to a fight, most likely there are things in you that won't allow for, oh man, it's such a hard topic, because I want to say that there are maybe some ways in which pride can definitely play a part in keeping you from de-escalating or from allowing your spouse to gain any ground in the conversation, in the communication.
Yeah.
So that can definitely play a huge part in not allowing for a more civil or whatever you want to call it conversation.
Right.
Yeah. So I totally agree with you that that's a great question to ask.
Yeah. Why am I defensive?
Yeah.
I find that for me, as soon as I realize, if I'm like aware enough to realize that I'm being defensive, I can see how that will escalate the situation. And I won't be clear on what the other person is saying. Like I won't be fully hearing them because I'm already ready to like defend myself and give a rebuttal. Yeah. And so I'm not able to actually figure out how to better the situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so what to do if you are the only one that sees a problem with the communication in your relationship? So what if you're the one, like somebody might be listening to this now that like the spouse doesn't care about making things better, at least right now? What should that person do when there's a lot of fighting happening in the marriage?
Yeah. No, I get the question. It definitely is one that I think awareness to that reality is helpful. I don't think there's necessarily any action that you can take to rectify the fact that they're checked out and that they don't want to improve the way that they communicate so that you're not fighting all the time. I don't think there's anything that you can do other than, I think there's a lot you cannot do. I think there's a lot that
Explain that.
I think there's a lot that you can do to not allow yourself to fight, to not allow I'm not saying to let yourself get beaten. I'm not saying to let yourself just get run over by your spouse's communication. I'm just saying I think there's ways in which you can add to the de-escalation, add to the desire to not fight, and that be the kind of modus operandi of the relationship, where you're just like, nope, I don't want to fight anymore. And every conversation, I'm going to annoy you And it will be annoying. Please try not to make it annoying to your spouse that you're somehow above them in your communication because you're trying to de-escalate, because you're trying to be the better person.
Yeah, that will be annoying at first, but it is hard to engage in a fight when the other person is unwilling to fight.
Right.
Which is a positive.
There's going to be a little bit of a balancing act happening because you're going to try and not be annoying to your spouse and act like you're above them. And you're going to be doing everything in your power to de-escalate and not fight.
Which you mean?
To help your spouse come to an understanding, hopefully, potentially, that not fighting is the way you desire to communicate in the relationship.
Right. And you can do that by, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misunderstanding you, you can do that by not being defensive, asking questions about whatever it is that they brought up so you can figure out why they're upset or try to figure out a solution to the problem, but do that without engaging in the fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm just trying to speak to the difficulty because, as the Bible says, kind words are like heaping coals on your enemy's heads. And in a fight, you're making that person an enemy. So if your spouse is continuing to fight, even though you don't desire to communicate in that way, they are pitting themselves against you as an enemy. Mm-hmm. That's why we really don't like fighting as the method of communicating with your spouse in a marriage.
Right.
Because you're pitting yourselves against each other, and that's not effective in communicating.
Right.
You can't win. There's no effective communication. There shouldn't be a winner and a loser. There should be both people coming to understanding.
Yeah.
That's effective communication. So if your spouse still wants to pit you against him and you are trying your best to not be defensive and to come back with questions, which is great. Also, they will receive it as a different attack vector. Especially if they're in fight mode.
Yeah.
If they're in defensive mode, they're going to look at your actions as some other, undercover strategy to get them.
Yeah.
To win. And so they might fight harder.
At first.
Exactly. If you can remain calm and you can remain steadfast in that approach, that will greatly improve the odds that your spouse will come around to the fact that you are being authentic in your desire for this communication to be done in a different way.
Right.
So it's a long game. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You can't do this once and be like, didn't work.
Yeah.
And then, go right back to fighting. That's not how it's going to be. It's going to be a long, drawn out guerrilla warfare battle with your spouse.
Yeah.
Hopefully they will see this approach though and come to an understanding. Like I said, I don't think there's a do this and your spouse will change. Right. Sometimes they won't.
Right.
Sometimes they don't want to. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to say anything, do anything to make them change.
But that's a good first step. It's your only first step.
It's it. Your only step is to change yourself.
Yeah.
And do it in the best way that you can in order to help your spouse come to a better understanding of communication.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to fail at this too because you used to fight. And that used to be your MO. So once you're starting to make these changes, one, people aren't going to believe you.
Yeah.
And sometimes people not believing you when you're trying to get better in any aspect of your life is really disheartening. And you might get angry and default to how you used to act or how you used to communicate or what you used to do because you're disappointed in the fact that people aren't seeing your growth.
Yeah.
Understand that people don't perceive growth in the immediacy. It needs to be something that is happening where consistency is in place and you're continuously seeming to get better before they'll notice, hey, you're different now.
Yeah.
But that's going to take a long time. So don't get discouraged when you're not believed, when they're coming with a renewed sense or a renewed intensity in the fighting because they think you're trying to do something else to get at them.
Yeah.
Because that has been the MO. So like, don't be surprised by that. Don't get angry at them that they think that about you because it's a new thing.
It really
that you're
is
trying
to
establish.
It's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
For them to see that you actually mean it and that you're not doing it in a prideful way, but you're doing it in a way to say, I actually care about you and us.
Yes. Yes.
That takes time.
Yep.
How to make positive change when you will have to be the one to initiate it. We just talked about that. So I know we talked about fighting being bad.
Right.
But there is a healthy type of fighting, at least I think.
Yeah.
So what does healthy fighting look like?
So healthy fighting is, I have these issues. I've done the personal investigation and an issue still exists that I need to come to you and make you aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to do it in a way that there will be pushback and there will be some back and forth that happens, but we're going to do it in a way that prevents yelling because there's no need for it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, a shouting match is completely pointless. No one's ever left a shouting match and we're like, that worked. Nobody's yelled at each other and been like, I really think I got through to them that time.
I'm going to do that again.
I'm going to do that again. Like, no, we all get to this and hate ourselves and the relationship afterwards because of it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can investigate why you have this issue, it still remains an issue and you need to bring it to your spouse, do it in a way that's as orderly as you can, where you're like, hey, can we have a good time to sit down and discuss an issue that I have? Most of us don't make time to discuss our issues.
Mm-hmm.
We just throw it at the person as soon as they walk in the door from work, or we throw it at the person as they're walking out the door to work, or we wait till they're
about to fall asleep.
Yes. That's when we'll usually bring up these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Timeliness is a really good tool to remember when you are bringing issues to your spouse. Yeah. It matters a whole lot. And for your sake, they'll also be more receptive to hearing about the issue if they're in a safe environment, if it's a good time for them where they're not exhausted, where they're not supposed to be somewhere soon. That way they're not distracted. So make sure you do it in a way that is timely. And then, so like I said, orderly, timely.
You did work before that.
You did work before that.
I would add it's important to make sure you're communicating the heart behind the reason you're bringing it up.
Right.
That it's not that you hate the person.
Right.
It's not that you think they're awful and they do something really bad and you're just disgusted with them. The heart behind it is that you care about the relationship. And because you care about the relationship, you want to bring something up to make it a stronger relationship.
Yeah.
To work through an issue.
Yep.
That once it's worked through will make your relationship stronger. And so I think that the heart behind it is really important. And then this probably shouldn't have to be said, but doing it in a respectful way.
Yeah.
Not yelling, of course, but you can also not yell and be very disrespectful. So bringing it and communicating it in a way that you're caring about your spouse and you're respecting them at the same time.
And I think that's a really good word to summarize all of the other work that you did prior to bringing the issue. Even making sure that it's a good time for them is being respectful.
That's true.
Making sure that you know why this is something we even need to talk about is respectful.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to waste their time with your feelings only. without any why behind it, where you're just like, I feel this way about this.
Yeah.
That's fine if that's your goal, for them to just hear and receive your feelings.
Yeah.
But you have an issue that you also want to present. Don't bring your feelings as a clobbering tool.
No emotional throw-ups.
Right. Yeah, don't bring that just to clobber them over the head with and make sure that they know exactly how bad this issue has made them feel.
Yeah.
That's why you do the work beforehand, to figure out why you feel that way, because that'll be more informative to your spouse than just your feelings. You definitely can share those. You definitely can be like, every time this happens, this issue, I feel hurt, or I feel disappointed, or I feel annoyed. But this is why. That'll be way more informative than, what are you going to do about it that I feel that way?
Yeah.
That's not helpful.
Right.
That's not helpful, and it's not respectful, like you're saying. I like that. Respect is a huge part of how you approach these conversations.
Yeah, I like that. What is the best way for an individual to express their feelings in a relationship without starting a fight? I think we just kind of covered that. Is there anything else that you'd want to add to that?
No.
What are some effective listening techniques for better communication?
Yeah. I mean, this is the one approach that a lot of people, including myself, struggle with, but it is the other side of communication. Communication only happens when someone's speaking and someone's listening, and it goes both ways.
Right.
That's how you properly communicate as a human being. And a lot of times we negate or circumvent around one of those two things, where it's always the one person speaking and always one person receiving. And that's a lopsided relationship. It's not healthy, So, or it's both people speaking at each other and no one listening. Also unhealthy and not good for the relationship. Or you just have two listeners that just don't talk about anything. That's also unhealthy and not good for the relationship. So all of those things, unless it's in proper order where you have speakers and listeners and they go back and forth, that's the only way that you have a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Make sure that there's some balance to who gets to speak and who's listening.
For the purpose of understanding.
Yeah. So some ways in which to listen well would be, again, timeliness. I should say this. Timeliness is also important, but just making time in general for you to receive what your spouse desires to say to you.
That's a good point. So if your spouse is like beginning a conversation that you can already tell that you don't have the time and space to really give them your full attention, you might need to say, hey, I care about what you have to say, but right now I'm trying to get out the door in the next 10 minutes.
Right. So therefore, I would like for us to mark down a time later this evening, the next day, where I can fully be present to receive whatever you want to tell me.
Yeah.
I think that's super important. So make time to listen.
Yeah.
Make time to receive. If you care about that person, you'll receive what they want to communicate to you. Another way to listen better is to not translate.
I struggle with this one.
Yeah, a huge problem in a lot of communication is we will hear and then we will translate what we think the other person said instead of paying attention to the words that came out of their mouth.
Yeah.
Because out of our mouth springs our heart. Like that is flowing our heart in the words that we said, in the way that we said it. And I think sometimes because we know each other well, because we've navigated our relationship thus far, we sometimes correctly assume things from the way someone says something and attach more motive or more, emotion or other things to the words being spoken just from our knowledge of the person. So we're like, okay, you said that you desire me to take out the trash. What I'm getting from that is you desire me to be more of the man of the house who takes the trash out. And you're like, I didn't say that. I just really could use some help taking the trash out.
So a key thing to do is to ask questions. So when you listen, ask questions. So you're not assuming.
Right. That's after.
After what?
After you actually listen and receive the words that someone is saying in the way they're saying it.
Okay.
I would say before you ask questions, you should repeat back to them what they said. This does two things. One, it respects their words and their heart behind the words by you communicating it directly. Like, I heard exactly what you said, and I'm repeating it back to you so you know, without a doubt, that I heard you and listened to you well.
Yeah.
That communicates a lot of things just by you repeating back to them what they said.
Yeah.
Then afterwards, you can say, now, what did you mean by this part?
Yeah.
That's when you can ask questions. But I think if you start with that really that respectable, hey, let me communicate back to you what you said.
Yeah.
I think that speaks volumes of your ability to listen well to your spouse.
Yeah. Your spouse knows that you have their full attention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You are showing yourself someone that listens well. You are showing yourself someone that is present.
Yeah.
You know, and because we can say like, no, I'm here. What's on my phone? You know,
yeah.
We're in the proximity to that person, but we're not there.
Yes.
Only through, I think, kind of this repeating back to them what they're saying and then asking questions like you said, do we show that we're there?
Yes.
I think outside of that, our spouse just doesn't know. And we really need to make them aware so that they can bring down their defenses and have a more open dialogue because they know you're there with them.
Yeah, that will definitely bring down defenses when you realize that your spouse is listening to understand the heart behind what you're saying, that they actually care to hear you. Yeah, it helps you know that they care. And then you won't be ready for a fight as much.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so how to communicate my needs without sounding demanding? We kind of touched on this too, but this is a question I found floating around.
Yeah. How to communicate my needs without appearing or sounding demanding.
Yeah.
I want to go straight to kind of the answer that I gave earlier, which is that investigation that I did beforehand, before I told you about it.
Yeah.
That'll help a lot in any communication that you do. Why do I want to communicate this? What is the thing that actually is most important to me in what I communicate?
Yeah.
Because there can be all of these peripheral emotions and things that attach themselves to the issue that aren't actually the issue. They're just peripheral things.
Right.
So making sure you know the most important thing in this issue is this part of the issue.
Right.
Is the thing that is creating this feeling inside of me. So that's what I want you to know about so that maybe we can work on a solution to figuring out because I don't want to feel this way anymore about this.
I like the way you said that, to find a solution. I think that kind of just tears down the demanding part. If you did your work and you're bringing the problem with the question of, can we find a solution for this? That helps it not sound demanding. Because you're not saying, I need you to do this and leaving it there. You're not like giving them like this, you do this or, you failed. Yeah. You're giving them a way to like talk into the issue and say, I hear how you're feeling. I hear your heart. I see the issue. Maybe could we do it? This might be better for me. So you can figure out a solution together and that's less demanding.
Yeah. Do I care enough about my spouse to trust that they can find a solution with me. Bringing that kind of heart of, hey, can we do this together, really speaks to the fact that you trust your spouse to be able to find a solution with you.
Yeah.
If you're demanding, that means you think they're incapable of finding solutions.
Right.
Because you had to do it for them.
Yeah.
And they feel that. They feel incompetent to find solutions if you're giving them one. If you allow them, though, to come to, even if you have a solution in mind, you can navigate the conversation to go in that direction.
Or just state, this is the solution that I thought of. What do you think of that? And what are your thoughts on that?
Perfect. Yeah, that would work too.
Yeah.
That would work too. Any way that you can be less manipulative in coming to that solution is helpful. And then allowing them to take that journey with you to finding that solution is preferable.
I really like that because it will make you aware. If you realize that you are being demanding, even though you don't want to be, maybe the issue or a deeper issue for you is that you have trouble trusting your spouse.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right. What are some healthy ways to resolve conflicts in marriage? And let me just give a little more detail to this. From the way this question is worded, I'm guessing it means like there's already an issue. Like maybe it's an in-law issue. Like whenever you go to the in-laws, there's just maybe your spouse doesn't want to go at all. Or there's an issue there and it keeps coming up. It just comes up and then there's fights about it. How do you resolve something like that that's already in the works? It is a conflict that you know is coming. It happened last week and it's coming next month.
I think the thing that comes to my mind, because we were just going over this with a couple that we're meeting with, is do that ladder of integrity. If you just Google ladder of integrity, emotionally healthy, you will find a chart that allows you to write down the issue that's on your mind. And that's a great starting point because a lot of times we don't actually address the issue that's on our mind. We address all of the peripheral relationships that are a part of this issue. We will address the fact that our spouse left his or her clothes on the floor instead of, we're actually mad about this. We're actually anticipating this issue, but we're going to focus on all of these other things instead of that. So the ability to focus on right now, the issue on my mind is, and write that out is really helpful.
So to go with that example, you're saying the clothes on the floor might actually be, which you don't know yet, is that you value having a clean home and being...
Don't even get that far yet.
Okay.
I'm saying, let's say it's an issue about something that will occur when you go to your in-laws' house.
Okay.
Because it occurred before, it's going to occur again. That's the issue on your mind. You will address the fact that you hate that your spouse leaves their clothes on the floor.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. Don't even get that far. Don't focus on the clothes on the floor. That's actually not the issue.
Right.
You will focus on that because you want to avoid addressing this issue.
Yeah.
So right now, the issue on my mind is this. A lot of times we will, it's like procrastination. We will do everything in our power to not do the thing that we need to do.
Yeah.
We'll work really hard.
All of a sudden, you're really busy.
Yeah. We will do 1,000 things to not do that one thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with addressing issues that we have, conflicts that we have. We will do everything and focus on everyone and everything else except that. So write out, this is the main issue on my mind. And then this ladder of integrity gives you the ability to move up the ladder. So integrity is truth. You want to discover the truth about the thing that's on your mind, the issue that's on your mind. having knowledge after going through the ladder of integrity, figuring out my part in it, figuring out what I value and what this issue with my in-laws or at my in-laws' house cuts against my value of blank is so helpful when you'll actually go and address that issue. Because maybe it's something like you've talked about where it's just you. It's just something that you have that issue at your in-laws' house because you're unaware of why you feel a certain way about it. And maybe after doing this ladder of integrity, you know the truth now that it's just something from your past or something that's just built into who you are. That
maybe you're insecure in some way, and when you go there, you feel that insecurity and you don't like going there then.
Yes.
And you didn't realize that. You just thought it was their house and those people.
Or this ladder of integrity can empower you to address whatever issue it is. And now you will be super clear on addressing that issue because you know exactly what value it's cutting against. And you can inform the person or the people that are cutting against this value in a way where you're not coming with, you just bother me so much. You just make me angry. You just hurt me. Whatever it is, you can say, no, I really value this. And when you do this action, it really bothers me because this is so valuable to me as a person. And I just want to let you know about that. I think that is a tool. It's just a tool for you to get real clear about what is true to you.
Right.
What is true in the situation that's on your mind. And that will help you when you have an ongoing conflict like this.
It really equips you to address the issue head on.
Right.
So you can get to the heart of it. So hopefully it doesn't continue to come up.
Right. If it's an ongoing conflict, interjecting this knowledge of yourself and knowledge of your values and knowledge of what you actually think, not what you feel and that's informing your thinking, but what you actually think about this issue is going to be invaluable.
Yeah.
Because now you really are clear and you're able to know exactly what your next right step is.
Yeah. I like that. That's good. So this, I'll just read the question. We can skip it if we've already covered it.
Okay.
How should a couple handle disagreements about important decisions? We did not cover that.
No, I think that's good. I think that's good to address. Again, coming with a mindset of respect is hugely important to make sure that the person that you have to make this important decision feels like they're a part of it, feels like you want them to be a part of it. So expressing like, hey, we have this important decision coming up. Can we together really work on finding out how to make the right decision?
Yeah.
That is going to speak volumes to that other person, knowing that they're valued in this situation. You want their input. You want their decision-making ability. You think they're capable of making a good, informed decision on this important issue. So making sure that you are bringing your spouse into that and not trying to, this is what I find sometimes, and we've had this in our marriage where a lot of times you'll want to take something yourself because you feel like it will help me in some way by you just taking this on yourself, not telling me about it because you're going to figure it out and you're going to work it out so that I'm free to worry about whatever I do with my life,
Yeah.
But that leaves me out. Now there are definitely things where you could ask me to be a part of it. And I'm like, I'd rather not.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would still like to be a part of saying, no, I think you could take that one. You would be better suited to figure this out. You would be better suited to make the final decision on this. I don't really have an opinion or a say, but at least I was allowed in so that I feel like if I needed to, you would value what I
Yes.
had to say. You would value my decision.
Yeah.
That would make me feel good.
What would you say to the couple who have already, maybe they haven't sat down and really talked it out yet, but they know this decision is coming up and they both want a different outcome? How do they sit down and work that out?
So they have an important decision coming up. They both want different outcomes. Are they aware?
They're aware. Like they've talked about it and they're like, we're not unsure what to do because I think we should do it this way and you think that we should do it that way. We disagree. But this decision has to be made.
Yeah.
What's your any tips for that? Because that's a really hard place to be in.
I think my tip would be to approach the conversation at a later time and keep doing that until you come closer to an understanding of each other.
Not ignoring the issue, but like talking about it, but giving it breaks.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Give it a break. Come back to it at a later time. Hopefully, you're not so ingrained in your decision that the conversation never changes each time you approach it. Hopefully, you are humble enough to know that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
And when you approach it the next time, maybe your spouse by that time has thought of a different way of explaining why they came to their decision or explaining a part of your decision on why it wouldn't work for this reason. And you could be humble enough to say, I see your side. I see what you're saying. I see your approach to this. Okay. Now we can kind of chip away at my decision and maybe it will come and look closer to yours.
Right.
Or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think a lot of times, like with that ladder of integrity that I just talked about, you need to do that sometimes multiple times before you get to the truth of how you actually feel about whatever issue is on your mind. It's the same thing here where you might have to approach that conversation multiple times before you actually get to an understanding of each other.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the key is taking breaks, but also having times to discuss it where you're really inquiring of your spouse why they think and feel this is the best decision and being able to respectfully communicate back why you think and feel it's the wrong decision and vice versa so that you can understand where each other are coming from so you can make those compromised changes if needed.
Yeah. I always hate compromise. I like negotiation.
Negotiation?
Yeah. No, compromise is what the government does, and somebody's losing in a compromise.
That's
Negotiation leads to a unified decision,
Yeah.
which you have to make because you are one in the relationship, in the marriage. So eventually you're going to have to get to a unified decision about whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, and that will honestly inform your mindset in the conversation.
Yeah.
Where you're coming into that conversation knowing that you're going to have to get to a unified decision.
Yeah.
You're not coming into the conversation saying, I'm going to hold out until a compromise is offered.
That's a good point.
And I get at least 3/4 of my decision.
Yeah. So in a marriage, there shouldn't be
Compromise.
It shouldn't be a habit of having compromise. It really should be negotiation.
And negotiations are long. They are repeated. You know, like you think about a negotiator on a police call.
Yeah.
You know, they're talking to this person for a long amount of time. They are talking to them in a way that is de-escalated. They're talking to them in a way that really asks about things that might be seemingly unrelated to the issue at hand. Why are you held out in this house threatening to kill hostages? Yeah. Like, they're talking about this person's, like, I don't know, relationships. Mm-hmm. Or they're talking about this person's, puppy that they found out about through, investigation or something like that. they have strategies to this, but you can also come into a conversation negotiating and saying, all right, I'm feeling like maybe this thing over here or this situation or this circumstance or this past happening is informing your current decision. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That's negotiation, where you're trying to figure out ways in which that person came to their why in their decision.
So it's really it's important to be as honest as possible. And the time in between the conversations you have are going to help you understand yourself even more.
Right.
So you can be more honest the next time. Because what I found for myself, because I see what you're saying now, because I found for myself that time sometimes is the only way I understand like deeper reasons why I'm thinking something or feeling something. Yeah. So like talking it out is helpful, but then the time in between is helpful because I'm like, oh, I actually have this fear about this and that's why I feel this way. I didn't know that before until after having another conversation and then having more time. Yeah. And that's really helpful.
Yeah. And I like what you said about being honest as possible in those conversations, communication. Mm-hmm. I'm saying negotiation only because I don't like compromise and I want to replace that word. Don't come to it like a negotiation. Come to it like you're just talking to each other. Come to it that you're just going to try and be as honest as possible with your feelings, with your why on whatever decision has to be made.
Yeah.
And do the give and take dance where you're trying to figure out the best way that we can come together in this decision, this unified decision.
Yeah.
I think it's really like, again, I could use the government as a bad example of compromise where no one's laying out their cards on the table. No one's laying out what they actually want to achieve in this spending bill that they're trying to attach all of these earmarks to. You know, like nobody's honest about that. And that's why they're doing compromises because they just need it to look good on paper enough to make the other person say, fine.
So they can get what they want.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But in negotiation, you're laying it all out and saying, here are my cards. From this, this is how I came to my decision.
Yeah.
Do you see any holes in that?
Yeah.
I want you to tell me if there's a hole in this way I came to my decision.
Right.
Because I want us to make the best decision for our marriage. Right. I want us to make the best decision for our lives together. If the issue is that important and you care enough about your spouse, you'll lay it all out so that they can speak into that on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be really helpful.
That's good. I like that. Last question. What are some strategies for overcoming it's kind of the same question. What are some strategies for overcoming reoccurring arguments in marriage? So I think that we already covered that.
Yeah. I think
anything else to add to that?
Yeah. Just come with a heart that the other person is cared for by you. That was a very long-winded way to just say, approach every conversation like you actually cared for that person.
Yeah.
And that will inform the way you speak to them. That will inform the way
they respond to you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So as to not get into a fight.
Yeah.
Fighting has never helped anybody. It never will help anybody. So make sure that you're not fighting people, all right? Communicate effectively. Go through this podcast. We will have chapter markers to show you all of the questions that we just addressed today. If you want to go back and watch any of them, we will see you on the next episode. Before you go, make sure that you subscribe. Make sure that you leave a review if you're listening to this on an audio platform. We love you all. Goodbye.